Seneca once said, "We often suffer more in our imagination than in reality." There is a quiet moment that visits almost everyone, usually late at night. The world finally slows down, the noise fades, your phone is face down, and yet your mind refuses to rest. You replay conversations you should have handled better. You think about goals you promised yourself you would start tomorrow. You feel the weight of time passing and the uncomfortable truth that you are not moving forward the way you know you could. Nothing terrible is happening in that moment. No crisis, no emergency, no real danger. And yet your chest feels tight, your thoughts spiral. You feel restless, anxious, and strangely disappointed in yourself. The Stoics understood this pain deeply. They knew that most human suffering does not come from events themselves, but from an undisciplined mind reacting without control. What you are feeling is not weakness, it is not bad luck, it is not a lack of intelligence or potential. It is the silent cost of a mind without discipline. During the day, it hides behind distractions, scrolling, entertainment, busyness, excuses. But at night, when there is nothing left to distract you, the truth surfaces. You realize how often you delay the hard things, how easily emotions hijack your decisions, how frequently you choose comfort over growth. Procrastination turns into quiet self-contempt. Lack of self-control bleeds into relationships, impatience, defensiveness, avoidance. Days blur together, and progress feels theoretical rather than real. This is not because life is unfair, it's because your inner world is unmanaged. Marcus Aurelius warned that a person who cannot govern their own mind becomes a slave, not to others, but to impulses, moods, and fear. And that slavery is subtle. It looks like knowing what you should do, but never quite doing it. It feels like motivation that comes and goes. It sounds like, "I'll start when things calm down," even though they never do. You don't fail dramatically. You drift. You drift away from discipline, away from clarity, away from the version of yourself you quietly admire but never fully become. The anxiety you feel isn't random. It's your mind signaling misalignment. You are capable of more focus than you use, more resilience than you test, more control than you claim. But without discipline, that potential stays trapped, turning inward as frustration. The Stoics believed the mind must be trained the same way the body is trained. Left alone, it grows weak, reactive, and chaotic. Conditioned through discipline, it becomes calm, steady, and powerful. And here's the uncomfortable part most people avoid admitting. You don't lack time. You don't lack resources. You don't even lack motivation. You lack mastery over yourself. That lack shows up as stress you can't explain, as anger you regret after the fact, as goals you keep rewriting instead of pursuing. This is why discipline is not about punishment or rigidity. It is about freedom. Freedom from mental noise, freedom from emotional overreaction, freedom from the endless cycle of starting over. In this video, we are not going to talk about motivation hacks or surface-level productivity tricks. Those fade quickly. We are going to explore something far more ancient and far more effective, the Stoic path to discipline, the kind that reshapes your mind, the kind that allows you to evolve under pressure instead of breaking beneath it, the kind that turns inner chaos into quiet strength. Because once you learn to discipline your mind, the world no longer controls you. And that is where true evolution begins.
The invisible prison. Why most people never evolve. There is a hard truth most people never fully confront. They are not stuck because life is cruel. They are stuck because their inner world is unmanaged. At first, this sounds harsh, but the Stoics never avoided harsh truths because clarity is kinder than comfort. In a world overflowing with distractions, opportunities, and endless advice on how to hack success, it's easy to point fingers outward. Blame the economy for financial struggles, society for emotional isolation, or fate for unfulfilled dreams. Yet deep down, the real barrier isn't external, it's the chaos within. An unmanaged mind wanders aimlessly, reacting to every whim, emotion, or impulse without direction. This lack of inner governance creates a subtle but unbreakable cycle of stagnation. People chase quick fixes like new apps, diets, or resolutions, only to find themselves right back where they started. Why? Because without confronting the unmanaged self, no external change sticks. The Stoics, those ancient philosophers who faced emperors, slavery, and exile, understood this profoundly. They saw that true freedom begins not in changing the world, but in mastering the one thing we can always control, our own responses. Seneca, for instance, emphasized that we suffer more in imagination than in reality, a reminder that an unmanaged mind amplifies every setback into a catastrophe. Imagine living in a house where the doors and windows are always open. Winds of doubt, fear, and distraction blow through unchecked. That's the unmanaged inner world. It doesn't just slow progress, it halts evolution entirely. People evolve when they grow, adapt, and transcend their limitations, but an unmanaged mind clings to the familiar, fearing the effort required for change. This truth isn't meant to shame, it's an invitation to awaken. Once acknowledged, it becomes the first step toward breaking free. Look closely at how most people live. They wake up already reacting. Messages dictate their mood. Small inconveniences trigger outsized emotions. Plans dissolve the moment discomfort appears. And when progress stalls, they don't ask, "Where did I abandon discipline?" They ask, "Why is this happening to me?" This question keeps them trapped. It's a victim mindset disguised as curiosity, shifting responsibility away from the self and onto vague forces like luck or others' actions. In the morning rush, a spilled coffee becomes a ruined day, not a minor mishap. A critical email sparks defensiveness, derailing focus for hours. By evening, unfinished tasks pile up, not because of time constraints, but because fleeting feelings hijacked the agenda. The Stoics observed this pattern millennia ago. Epictetus, born a slave yet rising to philosophical greatness, taught that events themselves don't disturb us, our judgments do. When we react impulsively, we're not responding to reality, we're enslaved to unchecked emotions. This reactivity turns life into a series of interruptions, where true priorities get buried under the noise. Consider the average workday. Notifications ping, pulling attention like strings on a puppet. A colleague's offhand remark festers into resentment. Deadlines approach, but anxiety leads to procrastination, not action. Over weeks, months, years, this unmanaged reactivity compounds. Relationships suffer from unspoken grudges. Careers plateau from avoided risks. Health declines from neglected habits. The trap deepens because it feels normal. Everyone else seems to live this way too. But normal isn't optimal. The Stoics urged us to pause and reflect. Is this reaction serving me? Does it align with my values? Without such questions, we remain perpetual reactors, never creators of our destiny. This unmanaged state isn't laziness, it's a failure to cultivate the inner discipline that turns chaos into order. Epictetus warned that the greatest mistake a human can make is confusing what is within their control with what is not. Discipline lives entirely on the side of what is within your control, and yet it is the first thing people surrender, not loudly, quietly. They surrender it when they hit snooze, trading rest for regret, when they avoid the difficult conversation, letting resentment build like rust on iron, when they scroll instead of think, numbing the mind rather than sharpening it, when they choose emotional relief over long-term clarity, opting for the temporary high of distraction over the steady glow of progress. These small surrenders seem insignificant in isolation, but they accumulate like interest on debt. One skipped morning routine becomes a week of sluggish starts. One unspoken truth in a relationship festers into distance and distrust. Over time, this surrender builds an invisible prison. It's not made of bars or walls you can touch. It's woven from habits, excuses, and unexamined beliefs. People inside this prison don't see the doors. They assume the limits are permanent. They move through life with a sense of confinement, wondering why opportunities pass them by, why joy feels fleeting, why growth seems reserved for others. The Stoics, drawing from their own trials, knew this prison well. Marcus Aurelius, emperor and philosopher, journaled nightly to reinforce his discipline, reminding himself that the mind must be a fortress against external turmoil. Without discipline, we become prisoners of circumstance, buffeted by every wind, but with it, even in chains, like Epictetus, we find inner liberty. The key to escape lies in recognizing these quiet surrenders and reclaiming them, one deliberate choice at a time. The illusion of "this is just how I am." One of the most damaging beliefs people carry is the idea that discipline is a personality trait. I'm just not a disciplined person. I've never been good at routines. I work better under pressure. I'll get serious when I feel ready. These statements aren't truths, they're stories we tell ourselves to justify inaction. They create a fixed mindset where personal evolution feels impossible. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the soul becomes dyed by the color of its thoughts. If you repeatedly tell yourself you are undisciplined, your behavior will obey that identity, not because it's true, but because repetition creates belief, and belief shapes action. Think of it as a self-fulfilling prophecy. The more you affirm your limitations, the more real they become. Discipline is not something you are, it is something you practice. Yet society subtly encourages the opposite idea. People are labeled early: the gifted kid who coasts on talent, never learning effort; the lazy one shamed into hiding potential; the emotional one excused for volatility; the unreliable one written off.
These labels harden into cages, and once someone accepts a cage, they stop testing its bars. Children absorb these narratives from parents, teachers, peers. You're just like your father, always procrastinating. Over years, the cage feels like home. But Stoicism teaches that identity is not fixed. Character is built through repeated choices under pressure. You are not undisciplined. You are simply untrained. And untrained minds default to comfort. To break this illusion, start by questioning the labels. Who assigned them? Do they serve your growth? Replace "this is how I am" with "this is how I've been until now."
Through practice, the untrained becomes masterful. The cage dissolves. Comfort is the enemy you befriend. Here is where the tension deepens. Comfort does not feel dangerous. It feels reasonable. Skipping one workout doesn't ruin your life. Avoiding one hard task feels harmless. Letting one emotional reaction slide seems justified. But discipline does not collapse in a single moment. It erodes through permission. Each time you tell yourself just this once, you reinforce a pattern. Emotions decide, not principles. Seneca warned that habits are first cobwebs, then cables. At the beginning, comfort feels light. Later, it becomes heavy. Eventually, it becomes suffocating. People don't realize how deeply comfort controls them until they attempt to do something difficult and feel an almost physical resistance inside. That resistance is not laziness. It is a conditioned nervous system. A mind trained to escape discomfort reacts to challenge the same way the body reacts to danger. You hesitate, you rationalize, you delay, and then you explain it away. This befriending of comfort turns potential allies like ambition and resilience into strangers. In daily life, it manifests as binge watching instead of skill building, comfort eating over mindful nutrition, or superficial chats avoiding deep connections. The Stoics saw comfort as a siren song, luring us from the path of virtue. To counter it, they practiced voluntary discomfort, cold baths, simple meals, to build tolerance. Without this, comfort becomes the default, shrinking our capacity for growth. Breaking free requires recognizing comfort's deceit. It promises peace, but delivers stagnation. The cost of undisciplined emotion. An undisciplined mind is not neutral, it is volatile. Small frustrations become mood swings. Feedback feels like attacks. Silence is interpreted as rejection. This is why lack of discipline shows up most clearly in relationships. You say things you regret because you couldn't pause. You withdraw instead of communicate. You seek validation instead of stability. The Stoics believed emotional mastery was not suppression, it was clarity. Emotions are information, not commands. But without discipline, emotions take control of the steering wheel. You don't choose how you respond, you react, and reaction creates regret. Over time, people begin to fear their own emotions. They avoid situations that challenge them, not because they are weak, but because they have never learned to govern themselves internally. This avoidance shrinks their life. Careers stall from unhandled stress. Friendships fade from unresolved conflicts. Self-esteem erodes from internal turmoil. Epictetus advised viewing emotions as guests. Welcome them, but don't let them rule the house. Training this requires pauses. Breathe before speaking. Reflect before acting. Undisciplined emotion isn't just personal, it's contagious, spreading negativity to others. Mastering it unlocks calmer interactions, deeper bonds, and a life less dictated by fleeting feelings. The quiet shame of wasted potential. Here is the part few people admit out loud. The most painful suffering is not failure, it is unrealized potential. Knowing you could be stronger mentally, emotionally, spiritually, but watching days pass unchanged. That quiet shame becomes background noise. People drown it with entertainment, with comparison, with productivity theater. But at night it returns, a sense that you are living beneath your capacity. The Stoics believed humans are designed to strive towards excellence, not external success, but inner alignment. When you fail to train your mind, that natural drive turns inward as frustration. You become impatient with others, critical of yourself, restless without knowing why. This is not a motivation problem, it is a discipline problem. The shame whispers in missed opportunities, the book unread, the skill unlearned, the relationship unmended. It festers into self-doubt, making evolution seem distant. To silence it, embrace Stoic reflection, review days not for perfection, but progress, acknowledge wasted moments, then commit to better choices. Over time, this shame transforms into fuel. Discipline is misunderstood, and that's the trap. Most people resist discipline because they misunderstand it. They imagine rigid schedules, harsh self-talk, joyless self-denial, so they reject discipline to protect their sense of freedom. But Stoicism teaches the opposite. The undisciplined mind is fragile. The disciplined mind is flexible. Without discipline, you are controlled by impulses, moods, and circumstances. With discipline, you gain the ability to choose your response, even under pressure. That ability is freedom. Yet because discipline is invisible, its absence is easy to ignore. No one applauds consistency. No one celebrates restraint. No one notices the moment you pause instead of react. But those moments compound. Like interest in a bank, small disciplines accrue to profound strength. The trap is viewing discipline as punishment rather than empowerment. Shift the lens. It's the tool that turns vulnerability into resilience, chaos into calm. The turning point most people never reach. There comes a moment, sometimes subtle, sometimes sharp, when a person realizes something must change, not externally, internally. They realize motivation will not save them, inspiration will not last, waiting to feel ready is a lie. The Stoics called this moment proheresis, the recognition of one's power of choice, the understanding that while you can control events, you can always control your discipline. Most people feel this moment, then retreat. They return to familiar patterns. They make promises they don't structure. They confuse intention with action. But a few lean into the discomfort. They accept that evolution requires friction, that mastery demands repetition, that discipline is built when no one is watching, and that realization sets the stage for transformation. Because once you stop asking, "How do I feel?" and start asking, "What does my character require?" everything changes. In the next section, we will confront the turning point directly, not with vague encouragement, but with Stoic principles you can apply immediately. Principles that shift discipline from something you force into something you embody.
Active discipline. How to evolve and master your mind. Up to this point, everything we've explored has led to a single realization. Waiting for motivation is a passive strategy. Discipline is an active one. This is where Stoicism makes its decisive turn. The Stoics did not believe discipline was about forcing yourself through life with clenched teeth. They believed it was about training perception, reshaping how the mind interprets discomfort, effort, and resistance. In other words, discipline is not something you do to yourself, it is something you become. This transformation isn't about harsh regimens or self-punishment. It's a profound shift in how we engage with our inner world. Stoicism, as articulated by philosophers like Epictetus, Seneca, and Marcus Aurelius, emphasizes that true mastery comes from aligning our actions with virtue and reason, turning passive endurance into active cultivation of the self. Epictetus, a former slave who rose to become one of the greatest teachers of his time, often reminded his students that we must focus on what is within our power, our judgments, desires, and actions, while accepting what is not. This active approach to discipline means we don't merely react to life's challenges, we proactively shape our responses to foster growth and inner peace. Seneca, in his letters, stressed the importance of daily practice, likening the mind to a muscle that strengthens through consistent exercise. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, reflected on his own struggles as emperor, using discipline to maintain clarity amid chaos. Together, their teachings form a blueprint for evolving the mind, not through external conquests, but by internal sovereignty. By embracing active discipline, we move from being victims of circumstance to architects of our character, evolving step by step toward a life of resilience and wisdom. The first shift, from reaction to choice. Epictetus taught that between an event and your response lies a choice. Most people never experience that space because they've never trained for it. An undisciplined mind reacts immediately. A disciplined mind pauses. That pause is everything. It's the difference between speaking and staying silent, between quitting and continuing, between comfort and growth. Discipline begins when you stop obeying the first impulse, not by suppressing it, but by observing it. When you feel resistance to starting a task, notice it. When you feel anger rise, notice it. When you feel the urge to escape into distraction, notice it. This observation weakens impulse. Awareness creates distance. Distance creates choice. This is the foundation of mental mastery. In Epictetus's Enchiridion, he elaborates that it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. This principle underscores the Stoic view that external events are neutral. It's our interpretations that color them with pain or opportunity. By training to pause, we insert rationality into moments of instinct, allowing us to align our actions with long-term values rather than fleeting emotions. Consider a common scenario. A heated argument arises at work. The undisciplined response might be a sharp retort, escalating the conflict. But with the pause, you observe the rising frustration, question its source. Is it truly about the issue or your ego? And choose a measured reply that preserves relationships and dignity. Seneca complemented this by advising we should discipline ourselves in small things, and from these progress to things of greater value. Starting with minor impulses, like resisting the snooze button or choosing water over a sugary drink, builds the habit of choice. Over time, this shift accumulates, turning reactive living into deliberate mastery. Marcus Aurelius practiced this daily, reminding himself in Meditations, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. This first shift, then, is cultivating that space between stimulus and response, where true freedom and evolution reside. Discipline is built in micro-decisions. Most people imagine discipline as a grand transformation. The Stoics knew better. Character is shaped in moments too small to feel heroic. Do you stand up when the alarm rings or negotiate with it? Do you finish what you start or leave it half done? Do you tell the truth, especially when it's uncomfortable? Each decision is a vote for the kind of person you are becoming. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, you could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think. This was not morbid, it was clarifying. Discipline sharpens when you treat time as finite and your actions as meaningful. These micro-decisions are the building blocks of a disciplined life, often overlooked because they lack drama. Epictetus emphasized that of all existing things, some are in our power and others are not in our power, urging us to focus our energy on the former, our opinions, motivations, desires, and aversions. In practice, this means treating everyday choices as opportunities for practice. For instance, when faced with a tempting distraction like social media during work hours, the micro-decision to close the app reinforces self-control. Seneca, in his essay on the shortness of life, warned against squandering time on trivial pursuits, advocating for intentional living, where each small act contributes to greater virtue. Over weeks and months, these votes compound, much like interest in a savings account, leading to profound changes in character. The Stoics viewed this as a form of self-sculpting, where consistent micro-decisions chiseled away at flaws, revealing a stronger self. Without this granular approach, grand ambitions remain fulfilled fantasies. By embracing the power of the small, we evolve incrementally, building a foundation of habits that support lasting mastery. Reframing discomfort as training. Here is the Stoic twist most people miss. Discomfort is not a signal to stop. It is a signal to train. Cold, hunger, boredom, effort, rejection. The Stoics intentionally exposed themselves to these experiences, not to suffer, but to reduce fear. Seneca practiced sleeping on the floor and wearing simple clothes so he would never fear losing comfort. He wanted his mind to remain calm regardless of circumstance. Modern life removes friction and weakens us as a result. The disciplined mind reintroduces friction deliberately. You choose the harder option when it aligns with your values. You finish tasks even when enthusiasm fades. You show up consistently instead of intensely.
This trains resilience. Epictetus echoed this in his teachings. There are only a few who control themselves and their affairs by a principle and a purpose. The rest are carried along like objects floating in a river. By reframing discomfort, we stop floating and start steering. In today's world, where convenience is king, think instant gratification from apps and delivery services, we've lost the art of voluntary hardship. The Stoics, however, saw it as essential. Marcus Aurelius, amid his duties as emperor, voluntarily reflected on hardships in Meditations, noting, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." This mindset turns obstacles into allies. For example, instead of dreading a challenging workout, view the burn as training for endurance in all areas of life. Seneca's voluntary poverty exercises, eating plain food, walking barefoot, were designed to build indifference to fortune's whims. Applying this today might mean fasting intermittently to master hunger impulses, or taking cold showers to build mental fortitude. Over time, discomfort loses its terror, becoming a familiar teacher. This reframing not only builds resilience, but accelerates evolution, as we no longer shy from the growth edges that discomfort highlights. Control the environment, not just the will. One of the most practical Stoic insights is this: willpower is limited, structure is reliable. Discipline does not mean fighting temptation endlessly. It means designing your environment so temptation loses power. Remove distractions before they become battles. Create routines that reduce decision fatigue. Simplify choices so action becomes automatic. Marcus Aurelius organized his life around order because chaos breeds weakness. Your environment should support your discipline, not sabotage it. Epictetus advised focusing on what we can control, which includes curating our surroundings. In his discourses, he notes, "Stop allowing your mind to be a slave, to be jerked about by selfish impulses, to kick against fate the one moment and the next to arrange things as you will." By structuring our environment, we prevent the mind from being jerked. Seneca, too, in his letters to Lucilius, recommended simplifying life to avoid unnecessary desires. Practically, this means keeping your workspace free of non-essentials, scheduling deep work blocks without interruptions, or preparing healthy meals in advance to sidestep impulsive eating. Modern psychology aligns with this. Concepts like choice architecture echo Stoic wisdom, showing how environment influences behavior more than sheer will. If willpower depletes like a battery, structure acts as a charger, making discipline sustainable. Aurelius's imperial routines, rising early, journaling, demonstrated this. Order amid empire's chaos preserved his mental clarity. By controlling our environment, we free willpower for higher pursuits, evolving from reactive to proactive masters of our domain. Responsibility without self-cruelty. Stoicism demands responsibility, but never self-hatred. When you fail, you do not spiral into shame. You analyze. What happened? What assumption was wrong? What structure failed? Failure becomes feedback. The disciplined mind does not collapse under mistakes, it recalibrates. This is how discipline sustains itself long-term. Epictetus warned against self-pity, stating, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." Responsibility means owning outcomes without emotional flagellation. Seneca advised gentle self-examination in On Anger, suggesting we review days like a teacher corrects a student, with firmness but kindness. Marcus Aurelius modeled this in Meditations, critiquing his lapses without despair, viewing them as learning opportunities. In practice, after a setback like missing a deadline, dissect it objectively. Was the plan flawed? Did distractions win? Adjust accordingly, without labels like failure. This approach prevents burnout, fostering compassionate accountability that encourages persistence. Over time, it builds a resilient mind where responsibility fuels growth rather than guilt. The daily Stoic practice of mental mastery. Discipline is not built in dramatic moments, it is built daily. Morning reflection. What kind of person will I practice being today? Midday awareness. Where am I reacting instead of choosing? Evening review. What did I do well? Where did I fall short? This practice trains clarity. Over time, you begin to notice something powerful. You are less reactive, more grounded, harder to shake. External chaos loses influence, internal order strengthens. Seneca's evening reviews, Epictetus's focus on daily choices, and Marcus Aurelius's meditations form this triad. Start mornings with intention setting, aligning actions with virtues like wisdom and courage. Midday, pause to observe impulses. Evenings, journal objectively. This routine, drawn from Stoic exercises, cultivates mindfulness, turning abstract principles into lived reality. Evolution is quiet, but inevitable. Here's what discipline actually gives you. Not perfection, not constant confidence, not emotional numbness. It gives you stability, a calm center that remains intact under pressure, a sense of self-trust that doesn't depend on mood, a mind that no longer sabotages itself. This is evolution, not sudden, not flashy, but irreversible. Because once you experience self-mastery, you cannot unsee it. You realize how much suffering was optional, how many reactions were unnecessary, how powerful a trained mind truly is. And that brings us to the final step, not the end, but the continuation. Seneca noted, "As long as you live, keep learning how to live." This ongoing evolution, rooted in discipline, ensures growth persists, transforming the self into its highest form. The long path forward. Discipline as a way of life. By now, one truth should be clear. Discipline is not a phase. It is not a challenge you complete. It is not something you turn on only when life becomes difficult.
Discipline is a way of living. The Stoics never promised an easy path. They promised a meaningful one. When you train your mind, life does not suddenly become smooth, but you become steady. Problems still arise, but they no longer dominate you. Emotions still appear, but they no longer command you. This is the quiet power of discipline. You stop being surprised by hardship. You stop being controlled by impulses. You stop waiting for permission to become who you know you should be. Instead, you act. Not perfectly, not dramatically, but consistently. And consistency is what reshapes character. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that the obstacle is the way, not something to be avoided, but something to be used. Each challenge becomes a chance to practice patience, restraint, courage, and focus. This is how mastery grows, not in isolation, not in theory, but in daily life. Every morning you rise when it would be easier to stay comfortable. Every time you pause instead of react. Every time you choose effort over escape. Those moments accumulate. They build a mind that is calm under pressure, a character that does not fracture under stress, a sense of self-respect that no external approval can replace. And here is the final Stoic reminder. No one else can do this work for you. Not a mentor, not a book, not a video. They can point the way, but discipline is practiced alone, in the moments no one sees. That is where evolution happens. If this message resonated with you, reflect for a moment. Where in your life are you reacting instead of choosing? Where have you mistaken comfort for peace? What small act of discipline could you practice today? If you're willing, share your thoughts or experiences in the comments. Your journey may become clarity for someone else. If you found value here, support the channel by liking the video, sharing it with someone who needs it, and subscribing for more Stoic wisdom focused on self-mastery, resilience, and mental clarity. This is not about becoming emotionless. It is about becoming unshakable, not rigid, but grounded, not perfect, but disciplined. Remember, you do not control the world. You do not control others, but you do control your response, and that is enough. Train your mind, discipline your actions, and allow time to do what it always does to those who persist. It transforms them. Until next time, walk the path with intention.